Okay, so I'm gonna be honest with you. Whenever I put one of the topics yesterday as a mid-tier wall, it was kind of a joke.
Yeah.
And you might see the only topic that we have today is Stix Bunkjunker. And that's not a joke.
No, it is not. Liquid are now 70 pulls into Stix Bunkjunker without a kill. This is absolutely crazy turn of events for the Race to World First, as you have between the competition mode page and our yellow paint hack.
Dude. Okay, so let's start with Echo. So Echo yesterday, they finished up all their heroic splits. Like at time of recording this, I think they were doing Gallywix and Muggsy. Then they killed some bosses. They killed the first 3 on Mythic, like right after their dinner. They killed Rick Reaver pretty quickly, all things considered. They downed pretty much everything. And then they started pulling Sprocketmonger for maybe an hour on stream and went to bed. All right, this is totally fine. Liquid comes in. First, basically 4 hours of their day, 5 hours of their day, they're doing Mythic Plus. They're gearing up, basically getting all of the gear that's potentially possible on this reset. Then they jam most of their upgrades. Obviously, they didn't use all of their crests or anything like that, but they used a lot of their upgrades realistically on heroic crests. I don't think they've
the rune crests are pretty free to spend, but a lot of the gilded crests and the sparks of fortune have still been held.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of that stuff is still being held. And then they started pulling Stix Bunkjunker, which we talked about yesterday because Instant Dollars had pulled Stix Bunkjunker. It looked like it was going to be a little bit difficult just because some of the texture of how that fight was looking was, it was just looked like a hard fight. It looked like the Scrap Masters were able to get people killed off. We kind of assumed that it was going to be a 15 to 10, like a 10 to 15 pull boss because
my prediction when we initially sent in our predictions, mine was 2. Yours was 1.
Mine was 1.
Yeah.
So, but mechanically, like after having seen the mechanics, I was just like, okay, whatever. The Scrap Masters are kind of obnoxious. Liquid begins to pull the boss, and it's very clear very quickly that the damage that's required to kill this boss is a lot higher than you would have initially anticipated.
That actually wasn't clear for the first 50 pulls because they didn't run into Enrage for a long time. So they were playing 3 tanks, 4 healers, and then they wiped to Enrage at 20%, and they were like, oh, we can't play 3 tanks, 4 healers, and kill this boss this week. We got to actually cut down. They were playing 3 Blood DKs, then they swapped 2 Blood DKs, 1 Unholy DK, then they swapped to just 2 Blood DKs, then they swapped to 1 Blood DK, 1 Prop Warrior. So they had to go for a very aggressive, trying to squeeze more damage out on this boss, and it still has yet to work out. Now, they were very close.
Yes.
By the end of the day, they had a 10% wipe with 3 people dead for a long time, so, it is killable.
For the record, whenever I said the damage check was, really tight very quickly,
killing the ads in time?
Exactly, getting the ads killed off in time.
Fair.
They started running a really weird comp. And
3 Moonkins have spawned into this raid where a lot of us were thinking 0 was going to be the Moonkin number.
Yeah, originally they started off, and it's basically just because of those mines that they have to...
you have to kill the mines within 30 seconds, but you have to DPS them quickly to get them to detach from their garbage piles.
So they're attached until they go from 75 to 0, and they spawn and probably they spawn attached to the trash. We'll show it in a second with a video, just a full as we talk about it. But they spawn 40 yards from the boss. The only specializations that can do any damage to them are basically Balanced Druids and Shadow Priests. This fight is absolutely absurd. So let's go ahead and take a look.
There's our yellow paint screen,
but instead at the Warcraft Logs Race to World First recap page. And here's the thing. Liquid have now spent how many pulls on this boss?
69
pulls.
Nice.
And their best pull is 11.6%. The boss is 100% killable right now, this reset. I originally, coming into this season, thought that Blizzard was going to make a lot easier of a raid tier because of how difficult Nerevar was for the average Mythic Raider, and it looks like Blizzard has decided to go the opposite direction and actually make a harder raid tier.
I will say it's not too late for Blizzard to make this tier easier for the average Mythic Raider. It will require them to swiftly nerf Stix Bunkjunker. Now, they shouldn't do it for the Race to World First at this point. At this point, Stix Bunkjunker should be this difficulty for the Race to World First, but as early as next reset, I think you could hit Stix with a pretty sizable nerf suite to make it feasible for an average cutting-edge guild to have a chance against this thing, which is the 4th boss in the raid, right? It shouldn't be necessarily that hard.
Now, I'm interested in your thoughts on this. Just let me lay this out for a second. I actually have so many problems with this boss. I actually don't think that Stix Bunkjunker is inherently a bad fight. I do think that, if it was a 5 to 10 pull boss, we wouldn't really say too much about it. The gimmick of you getting on this heap of trash and you roll over these trash piles out in the middle of the room, I think it's like a kind of a fun fight. Now, the problem happens whenever you actually turn this from a fun fight into a hard, difficult boss. Because the mechanics of this fight, they're actually pretty high variance just in general. The spawn locations of the Tesla coils around the room is a point of variance. The spawn location of the bombs are a point of variance. And then the spawn location of the bomb crawlers, what are the exact names of those bombs? I can't
so there's the bombshells that
So the variance of the bombshell spawn location is a huge deal as well. And it just makes this fight so much more difficult. And what's not actually said is, and this is the part that actually wiped them the most, is basically, if you hit any of these bombshells with a heap of trash, then it explodes the bombshell and one-shots your entire raid, which they're basically using a bunch of monks with Ring of Peace to knock the bombshells at the last possible second out of melee, and then allowing these heaps of trash to come in from the opposite side of the room to be able to contact the boss.
They have a rule that's like, you come in from the edge of the room, and we move the bombshells to the middle of the room relative to the boss. And that's the way to try and keep this happening. Yeah, I think what Blizzard should do if they're doing this is just make like the boss and bomb hitboxes bigger for your bombs once it's max sized, so that if there is a situation where bombshells are on the boss, you don't ever risk hitting them as you roll into the boss. I think that would be a really good change, so that you didn't have to do this nonsense with keeping the bombshells on one side of the boss and rolling into it from the other side.
Now, I think that bombshells getting hit by the trash heap and exploding your raid is ridiculous. I also think the Tesla coil, which is part of the mythic mechanic of this fight, it is overtuned to the point where if you don't basically like press the defensive after the first tick has contacted you with this Count Dooku lightning, you're gonna die. And then the ricochet shot hits you for 40 million health. There is a couple of specializations, particularly Windwalker Monk, if they're pressing Dampen Harm, that they're able to actually live the ricochet shot from the ad, but basically no other DPS is living it. And if you don't actually get the trash heap to a middle-sized trash heap in 12 seconds after getting on top of this trash heap, it's pretty tough. Like, it's nearly impossible. I do think that this Liquid did something really cool with their weak auras, where they were basically soft assigning which scrap master you're supposed to go pick up with the trash heap. Again, that's totally, I think it's a sick strat. And if the fight was a little bit easier, the fight died rather quickly, because the scrap masters actually weren't even the biggest point of conflict for this guild. It's crazy. I thought the scrap masters were gonna be the hardest part.
Yeah, it's one of those fights where there are so many hard parts that the fact that you have so many different things to focus on is sort of multiplicative on the difficulty, right? Because you are trying to optimize your damage so much, because there is so much ambient healing, and because when you're rolling your garbage pile, you have like 4 different things you need to do all of at the same time.
Yes.
I think it would be a lot more fun if it was only the 1 or 2 things that you needed to focus on for an average guild. Now, that being said, I think this version's probably pretty fun for a Race to World first guild to prog. But yeah, if I was Blizzard, I would be nerfing this boss quite a lot on the reset. I would be coming in with some aggressive stuff, like maybe even you hitting a bombshell, you just roll through it now. You don't pick it up, you just roll through it, and like remove the part on all difficulties about hitting a bombshell mattering with the garbage.
That mechanic is too much.
That mechanic doesn't belong on a 4th boss, I don't think.
Hard bosses are fun. Hard bosses at the wrong part of the raid with the wrong mechanics being hard is not fun. And this is a fight that is hard for the wrong reasons and is not fun. It's like if Rick Reverb was turned from a 6-pull boss into a 60-pull boss. Rick Reverb had a lot of variance with the barrel spawns, the pyrotechnic barrel spawns, and that made that fight not very compelling, right? Like, it's just not a fun fight.
I think that one is one where like everybody will agree. Everybody will not enjoy barrel spawn location RNG dictating things. I do think Race to World first raiders probably do enjoy a fight like Stix being difficult in the way that Stix is difficult. I think that's cool. And obviously, like, it being a 4th boss versus a 7th boss or whatever, they don't care about that. There's like, Pogger's more hard bosses, right? Like, this is great.
GSG said he just doesn't like the fight. He thinks the fight's just not very good.
Yeah, Warlock player, not a Moonkin player. That's my diagnosis there.
Maybe it's something along those lines. I don't know, man. That fight is just, it's too much. I think that it needs to get nerfed. It not even necessarily in the context of Race Roll First. Like the Race Roll First, it's whatever.
Yeah. I think it is. I think it doesn't really matter if it's got like a limited edition Giga hard mode that the Race to World First guilds run into. I think Blizzard's problem has been that they've left bosses in this state for longer than they should in the past, and because this one is so early in the raid, it's going to be really bad if that happens again.
It literally, Brood Twister Ovanax killed so many
and this
guilds.
Is earlier in the raid than Brood Twister Ovanax was. Now,
I think it's easier.
It is. I think it's probably easier than Brood Twister, and the difficulty is more gameplay and less stupid weak auras. Although weak auras helping soft assign where to go is helping Liquid a lot. When a guild reaches this without that setup,
Instant Dollars didn't have it, and they kept wiping to the first.
Exactly, the Scrap Masters get a lot harder, and I think the Scrap Masters is where the difficulty should be. I think getting the Scrap Masters should be the hard part of this fight, but I think this fight has too many hard parts right now.
Yeah, exactly. I'm right there with you. I think the bombshells is probably the.
But don't nerf it this week. At this point, it's a lost cause for this week. It probably should have launched a little bit easier than this, but it's okay. It's not a big deal. But it will be a big deal if it is this hard next week, I think. And I think as early as next week, it'll be a big deal.
I think your guild, in no circumstances, should actually ever be pulling a boss that is like this. Like,
I would like to, but yeah, I don't know.
You know what I'm saying, though, right? Like, there's just no. And now also like looking into the future, why did they go Stix Bunkjunker? Because of
Sprocket could be Sprocket might be easier, it might be harder. It's hard to say, right? There's I remember we were having this discussion on Brood Twister that's like, man, shouldn't they just go Nexus Princess? I'm like, nope, Nexus Princess actually is 3 times harder. Now this time around, I've heard conflicting things about which of these two would actually be easier. Max was saying that maybe it would actually be Sprocketmonger that they have some cool stuff for, but from the perspective of the race, actually, I personally think that spending time wiping to Stix is probably smarter, because watching Stix as like Echo or Method, you're probably going to learn less than watching Sprocketmonger. So that's probably a good optimization.
That's fair. But if Sprocketmonger was easy, they would have immediately have killed it. Like it's not one of those things that like they wouldn't have actually even started on Stix if they thought Sprocketmonger. Sprocketmonger was going to be trivial.
Clearly, they were wrong about how hard Stix was, though, right? Like
that's probably true, but even still, they would have pulled Sprocketmonger if they thought it was going to, like, after seeing the HP on it, if they thought it was going to be easier. I've heard the damage check, like looking at the numbers on the HP of Sprocketmonger, it looks like the damage check's just going to be tough.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, we'll have to. Max said that he now thinks that Sprocket might have been easier than Stix. So we'll see, right?
Easier is a gradient, right? It could be 10 pulls easier. And
exactly.
It's still a 50 pull boss.
Yeah, it's definitely. It doesn't look like it's going to be free. And I think Echo had pulled it, 10, 15 times, right? Something like that. Let's pop open the Warcraft Logs competition mode page. Yeah, okay. Sprocketmonger, how are we doing on this? 7 pulls in?
4 pulls.
4 pulls, okay. 4 pulls, 79%. So, okay, yeah, I mean, they haven't really put any serious progression time into it, but they've done a little bit of pulling of it, at least. So at least we know it's not a 1 pull boss, right? And the fact that 4 pulls has only gotten them to 80% as well, it's probably at least a 20, at least a 30, probably more like a 50 to 100 pull boss as well. Yeah.
This okay, so this is definitely gonna make the race go a little bit longer. I think that this is
I mean, we're guaranteed to have a 2 reset tier at this point, right? Because it's gonna be Sunday.
Yeah.
And 3 out of 8 bosses are dead.
It kind of makes you question what the tuning is gonna look like moving forward into the raid. Like, how long is this really gonna be? Is this gonna be like a Sepulchre repeat?
It could easily be a 3 reset tier at this point.
Yeah.
Like, if Stix lives another half day, and Sprocketmonger's harder than Stix, and Sprocketmonger maybe goes down right at the end of the reset, and we still have 3 potentially really hard bosses all alive going into week 2. Yeah, I mean, that could easily be a 3-week tier.
All right, nobody go clip the part where we were talking about a second Spark being completely out of reach of few.
Yeah.
episodes ago.
Yep. We might see that Spark of Fortunes. It's a possibility.
All right. Yeah, that's basically going to be it for us. The Race to World First is going long, so if you want a bunch of content, watch the Race to World First. You can also get good value out of Twitch Primes on a lot of different channels.
Prime all the channels. Yeah,
prime all the channels, and we will see you guys in tomorrow's video. Goodbye.
Adios.